Peterson is a youth director at the Evangelical Covenant Church in Tremont, Minnesota. I called and asked her if she would be willing to do an interview with me, as youth ministry is something that I'm very interested in and is one of the main things I'm considering as a future career path. She agreed, and we met on Wednesday, October 26th at the Tremont Covenant Church. I chose to interview Mrs. Peterson because she is not only currently working in youth ministry, something of great interest to me, but she is also someone whom I admire greatly. As I have never really done an interview before, I was slightly nervous as I asked questions and made notes, but Mrs. Peterson was very understanding and helpful. She took a lot of time with me to make sure I had all the information I both needed and wanted. Today I'm excited to tell you about this interview and the information I gained from it. As a youth director, Mrs. Peterson's job requires her to work for the main part with teenagers, ranging in age from 12 to 18. While she works with all of these ages, she said if she had to pinpoint a certain age group she spends the most time with, it would be senior high, or ages 16 to 18. The hours that youth pastors work vary greatly depending on the size and situation of the church they're working for. Mrs. Peterson is scheduled to work at the church with the youth on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. However, she works far more than just these 3 days. All week long, she is putting together lessons plans, going to see children in her youth group who maybe haven't been around for a while, or perhaps going to visit a needy family of one of the children in her Sunday school class, along with many, many other things. She also makes several trips a year with the youth group to retreats, concerts, or even college visits. Mrs. Peterson said that one of the sacrifices of doing pretty much any job involved with youth ministry is that in one way, you're always on call. Your work is never really done. You never know when you're going to get a 3 a.m. phone call from a teenager who just needs to talk. This brings me to another very important point, communication. When I questioned Mrs. Peterson on the importance of communication in her job, she said that it was paramount, meaning chief in importance. As a youth pastor, you must be able to speak in front of others and be confident and sure of what you're saying. Mrs. Peterson said her main way of communication is speaking face-to-face with a large group. She said that even after all these years, it's a little nerve-wracking when you stand in front of a group of teenagers to speak. It's crazy trying to keep that many kids interested in what you're saying, especially at that age range when they're all about moving in action. I asked her how having such an active age range of people to speak to affected the way she planned her speaking and communication to the teens. She said that most important is to be creative. If you get up there and say the same thing they always hear in the same boring way, you'll lose them. She said the hardest thing is that in order for something to stick to any of the teenagers' heads, you have to say it multiple times. And it's always a challenge, finding ways to say the same thing over and over, but in different ways, so the kids are still interested. We also discussed how she goes about planning what she's going to talk about. She said that she always makes sure she has done as much research as she can on what she's going to speak about. She makes sure that she knows about the topic and can answer the many questions the teens are bound to come up with. It is so important to believe in what you're saying and be passionate about it. She said, if I go up there and talk about something that means nothing to me and I really don't care about, not only will those kids be able to tell in a second, but they will tune out and won't care what I'm saying. The only way to draw those kids in is to grasp their attention with my passion for the subject. Mrs. Peterson said that she always tries to write an outline for what she's going to speak about, something she was taught to do in pastoral school. She said she never writes down word for word what she will say because that means that it's not coming from her heart. However, she said that it's really good to have an outline to look at. You can get really carried away or passionate about a subject and completely forget what else you're going to talk about, so having an outline there can come in really handy. However, it is still really important to watch the kids. If you're talking about something and they're grasping it and you feel like you should continue on that subject, you need to be willing to throw your outline out the window. When working with teens, it's nice to have a plan, but allowing yourself to deviate from that plan if need be is vital. When I first began my interview with Mrs. Peterson, I asked her, why did you decide to become a youth pastor? She told me that at first she had no intention of being a youth pastor. Her interest lay in science, not with people. However, she really began to feel that she was called not to be a biologist, but to work with youth. At first that thought scared her, but after a while it became something she was very excited about, and she said that it was one of the few things in her life that lit her up. However, she was still very worried that she would do a bad job or that this was not really what she was supposed to be doing. She still felt very unconfident in herself. As we closed up the interview, I asked her one last question. What did she feel she had learned, and how had her attitude changed after so many years? She said, "I love my job. I know without a doubt this is where I'm supposed to be." I could tell that she now feels very confident in what she does, and this job still lights her up. She said that probably the most important thing she has learned over the years is to always have a teachable spirit, and that God will take care of everything if you just trust Him. After conducting this interview, I feel even more excited about making youth ministry a part of my future. While I'm certainly still nervous that I might do a bad job or that I might say the wrong thing in front of a group of teenagers, I do feel that with enough prayer, faith, and training, I can become a youth pastor. After speaking with Mrs. Peterson, I feel that I need to work on my confidence in speaking in front of a large group, as well as relying more on my heart and passion for a subject rather than my note cards. Jill Peterson and I talked about many things, and I know that if I ever have any other questions on the subject of youth ministry, she will be happy to meet with me and answer them if she can. I greatly enjoyed this interview, and I now feel much more aware of what to expect in this career and how to better plan my future.